Imagine this. In the heart of a sleepy Montana valley, where the mist hides more than just the mountains, a pack of once loyal dogs turned into shadows of terror, until one silent little girl stepped forward and changed everything you thought you knew about fear and redemption. Deep in the rolling hills of Misty Valley, Montana, where the morning fog clings to the pine trees like a secret, waiting to be whispered, an uneasy silence has fallen over the land. It's the kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle the air, thick with the scent of damp earth, fresh juniper, and something sharper, raw, unspoken dread. For months now, this close-knit ranching community has been haunted by a pack of 4 stray Labrador retrievers creatures that seem more myth than flesh and blood. Leading them is Shadow, the massive black-coated alpha, with eyes like storm clouds, her gait fluid and predatory, like smoke drifting through the underbrush. Then there's Blaze, the chocolate-brown firecracker, all rippling muscle and unbridled energy, his coat bristling with the kind of fury that sends chills down your spine. Trailing behind is Mist, the lanky gray youngster, twitchy and uncertain, always a step back, as if questioning his place in this wild family. And finally, Echo, the scarred enigma, his pale yellow fur marked by old wounds, moving with a haunted grace that hints at stories buried deep. These aren't your typical friendly labs, the ones that fetch balls at the park or curl up by the fire with a wagging tail. No, these dogs have turned from companions to a menace raiding chicken coops in the dead of night, scattering livestock into frantic stampedes and even nipping at unsuspecting hikers on the winding trails. Remember the Thompson kid? His jeans ripped to shreds, a gash on his leg that needed stitches. The stories spread like wildfire, each retelling, adding sharper teeth and darker intentions. Farmers whisper about them over coffee at the local diner, their voices low and edged with anger. They're ghosts, one might say, slipping through fences like they own the shadows. But here's where it gets real. These dogs didn't start out this way. Dig a little deeper and you'll find the root cause buried in human failure. Likely dumped after a shady breeding operation got busted upstate. Think cramped cages, neglect, maybe even outright abuse. These labs were thrust into survival mode. Starvation sharpened their instincts, trauma twisted their trust. It's a classic case of cause and effect when people treat animals like disposable goods. Gentle breeds like labs, known for their loyalty and affection, can flip a switch. Suddenly, that wagging tail becomes a warning growl, that playful bound a desperate charge. Take a page from history back in the 1990s. The ghost dogs of Yellowstone Pack made headlines for similar reasons. Abandoned pets from nearby towns formed feral groups terrorizing campsites and wildlife because humans had failed them first. Neglect bred aggression, and what started as scared survivors ended in tragedy for both sides. Contrast that with the labs we adore today, therapy dogs in hospitals guiding the blind, or simply being the ultimate family pet. The difference: environment and empathy. Without a stable home, even the sweetest soul can turn wild. And that's the trap. So many fall into the common mistake of reacting with fear instead of understanding. Townsfolk here in Misty Valley armed themselves with traps, motion cameras catching those glowing eyes in the night, and some even talked about bounties or worse, guns. But as we've seen in places like Detroit's urban stray crises, that knee-jerk approach only escalates the problem. Traps maim, guns kill unnecessarily. And suddenly, you're dealing with more than just dogs, you're perpetuating a cycle of violence that could have been broken with compassion. The lesson here is simple but profound. Fear breeds more fear. To truly solve the why behind the behavior, you have to look beyond the surface. Understanding isn't weakness. It's the first step to real change, the kind that saves lives on both ends of the leash. At the edge of town, where the asphalt fades into gravel, and then into untamed dirt paths, sits Whispering Pines Animal Haven. It's a ramshackle oasis, pieced together with salvaged wood from old barns and a whole lot of heart. Running the place is Grandpa Henry, a weathered former park ranger with silver hair matted by the wind and knees that creak like old floorboards after years on the trails. Widowed for a decade, he pours his soul into this sanctuary, nursing injured wildlife back to health with a chipped mug of black coffee in one hand and a quiet determination in the other. His eyes, sharp as eagle talons, scan the horizon every dawn, always alert for the next soul in need. But lately, that vigilance has turned inward, toward the one rescue he can't quite fix, his 9-year-old granddaughter Emma. Emma hasn't uttered a word in 18 months, not since the car accident that stole her father away in a screech of metal and shattered dreams. The day it happened, her voice vanished like a flame snuffed out by a gust of wind. She's a slip of a girl with messy auburn braids and a way of seeming smaller than she is, like she's holding back a piece of herself from the world. Therapists came and went, well-meaning neighbors offered prayers and pie, but nothing cracked through that wall of silence. Instead, she draws endless sketches in her worn notebook animals, mostly captured with a detail that's almost eerie for someone so young. Lately, though, Henry's noticed something odd flipping through those pages' faces that look suspiciously like the wild pack haunting the valley. Shadow's piercing gaze, Blaze's tense stance, Mist's hesitant poise, even Echo's scarred profile, all rendered with an intimacy that suggests she's seen them up close, though he'd swear she's never ventured that far. Henry mutters to himself one misty morning, watching her pencil dance across the paper from the porch. "Emma, darling, you warm enough out here?" No response, just the scratch of graphite. He sighs, takes a sip of his cooling coffee, and hears it a low growl from the barn that isn't their old mutt buddy. Heart pounding, he steps off the porch gravel, crunching under his boots. Through the thickening fog, he spots them 4 shapes at the pasture's edge, eyes like embers in the gray dawn. "Damn it all," he whispers, reaching for his radio. But before he can call for help, Emma stands, drops her sketchbook, and walks straight toward them barefoot and unafraid, like she's following a call only she can hear. What happens next will shatter everything Henry thought he knew about his granddaughter and about those dogs. But as the mist swirls around her small frame, a hidden truth begins to emerge, one that ties Emma's silence to the pack's scars in ways no one could predict. Stay with me, because this is where the real story begins. A first encounter that ignites a firestorm of backlash from a terrified town, and a little girl's quiet courage that just might save them all. What if a single wordless step could bridge the gap between terror and trust, igniting a town's fury in the process? Picture this. Henry's blood runs cold as Emma glides through the mist like a ghost, her small feet silent on the dew-slick grass, heading straight for the pack that's turned Misty Valley into a nightmare. He lunges forward, but she's already too far 30 yards out, palms outstretched in that eerie calm only she possesses. The dogs freeze. Shadow's hackles rise a low rumble, vibrating from her chest like distant thunder. Blaze coils like a spring, eyes blazing with raw suspicion. Mist whimpers softly tail-tucked, and Echo hangs back, scarred and watchful. Henry's mind races one wrong move, and this could end in blood. But Emma, she kneels slowly, her sketchbook forgotten on the porch, and extends her hand not to command, but to offer something intangible, a quiet invitation born from her own shattered world. In that suspended moment, captured forever on the sanctuary's grainy trail, Cam's something impossible unfolds. Shadow barks sharply a warning that echoes across the pasture, but she doesn't lunge. Blaze shifts uneasily, muscles twitching, yet holds his ground. Then Mist, the uncertain youngster, takes a tentative step forward, nose quivering as if sniffing out a long-lost memory. Henry's throat tightens. He grabs the radio, barking into it, "Sheriff Torres, get here now, the dogs are at the fence and Emma's right there with them." But no cavalry could arrive fast enough. The fog parts just enough for the sun to pierce through, lighting Emma's face like a beacon, and in a heartbeat that defies logic, Echo lets out a soft whine. Not aggression, but recognition. The pack doesn't scatter or attack. Instead, they hold mesmerized, as if this silent girl speaks a language they've been starving to hear. That footage, it spread like wildfire through Misty Valley, shared from phone to phone before the sheriff even pulled up. But here's the gut punch twist that no one saw coming. Buried in the enhanced clips analyzed later that night was a glint on Echo's neck, a faded collar tag half obscured by fur and scars. It wasn't just any tag. It bore the insignia of a distant Idaho farm known for training search and rescue dogs. Echo, it turns out, wasn't born wild. He was a hero once, pulling survivors from a collapsed mine years ago, only to be abandoned when his owners fled bankruptcy charges. Betrayed by the very hands that should have protected him, he'd gathered this ragtag pack from similar fates, turning loyalty into a shield of ferocity. Boom! Suddenly, these monsters had a heartbreaking origin story. A plot twist that flipped the script from villains to victims. But did that soften the town's heart? Not a chance. Word got out fast, and by evening, the community hall was packed tighter than a cattle drive. Air thick with sweat, coffee, and simmering rage. Folks who'd lost chickens or mended fences stood shoulder-to-shoulder, voices rising in a chorus of fear. "That girl's lucky she didn't end up like the Thompson boy," bellowed rancher Jed Harlan, slamming his fist on the table. "We wait any longer, and it'll be a kid in the hospital or worse." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, nods of agreement turning into shouts. "Set traps! Call in the hunters!" Sheriff Elena Torres, a no-nonsense woman with a badge polished from years of wrangling both wildlife and hotheads, raised her hands for quiet. "We're not forming a posse here," she said firmly. "We need facts, not pitchforks." But the backlash was fierce, a tidal wave of knee-jerk panic that drowned out reason. This is where the real analysis kicks in. Folks, cause and effect at its rawest. Emma's mutism. It's no mystery. Trauma like losing a parent can trigger selective mutism, as studies from the American Psychological Association show, where kids shut down verbally to cope with overwhelming grief. Her approach to the dogs. It's subconscious therapy. Her silence mirroring their scars, creating a bond that words could never forge. But rush in with force and you shatter it. Common mistake number 1. Compare this to real-life tales like The Boy and the Wolf in Alaska, back in the 80s, where a traumatized child formed an unlikely alliance with a wild pack, leading to mutual healing, versus tragedies in rural spots where fear-driven hunts ended in needless deaths, like the coyote culls that disrupted ecosystems and bred more aggressive survivors. Here in Misty Valley, the town's error was classic, labeling the unknown as evil without digging deeper. Extermination bounties. They've backfired everywhere, from Detroit's stray epidemics to Australian dingo wars, turning temporary fixes into endless cycles of loss. The lesson. In silence, we often hear the loudest cries rushing to judgment. Closes doors to miracles while pausing to understand, opens them wide. Henry stood at the back of that hall, arms crossed, heart pounding, as he defended Emma's reckless act. "She's reaching them in ways we can't," he argued, voice steady, despite the boos. But the crowd wasn't buying it, not yet. Whispers turned to plans, vigilantes eyeing their rifles, and just when it seemed the pack's fate was sealed in, walked Dr. Sarah Klein, the wildlife behaviorist from Jackson Hole, clutching a tablet with fresh footage breakdowns. Her arrival. It was the spark that could either calm the storm or ignite it further. Hang on, because what follows is a journey of building bonds through tempests and doubt, where Emma's quiet magic starts weaving threads of trust that no one, not even the skeptics, can ignore. What if the fiercest storms weren't just in the sky, but in the hearts of the broken, where a little girl's whisper of kindness could tame the wildest thunder? Dr. Sarah Klein didn't waste a second stepping into that charged town hall, her boots still muddy from the drive tablet glowing with breakdowns of Emma's encounter footage. "These aren't rabid beasts," she declared, voice cutting through the din like a lifeline. "They're survivors, traumatized, defensive, coordinating like a family unit forged in hell." The room grumbled, but her words planted seeds of doubt. Henry latched onto them, proposing a wild idea: give them 2 weeks. No traps, no guns, just observation, and Emma's inexplicable pull. The sheriff nodded reluctantly, but the skeptics, they simmered, plotting in whispers. Little did they know this fragile truce was about to test everyone, as Emma's quiet magic began weaving bonds stronger than steel, one sketch and treat at a time. Over the next days, under the watchful eyes of trail cams and Dr. Klein's binoculars, Emma turned the ridge into her secret workshop of trust. She'd hike up at dawn, thermos of warm milk in one hand, a bag of jerky and bread crusts in the other, her pencils worn to stubs. No words, just actions, leaving apple slices scented with her touch along the path, sketching portraits that captured the pack's essence. Shadow's regal stance. Blaze's coiled fire. Mist's wide-eyed curiosity. Echo's haunted scars. Labeled with names, she'd somehow intuited these drawings weren't just art. They were bridges, invitations to a world without betrayal. Mist warmed first, inching closer each morning, eventually nibbling from her palm while the others watched from the pines. Blaze followed suit, his growls softening to wary Huff's tail twitching not in threat, but tentative play. Shadow and Echo lingered on the fringes, ghosts in the mist, but even they began circling nearer, paw prints, marking the soil like reluctant signatures. Here's the deep dive. Friends, this isn't magic, it's science wrapped in heart. The pack's hyper-defensiveness. Pure cause and effect from abuse. Neglect spikes cortisol, the stress hormone, turning loyal labs into reactive survivors, as ASPCA studies on rescued breeds reveal. Emma's patience. It floods the scene with oxytocin, the bonding chemical rewiring fear into connection. Think gradual exposure therapy, where rushed force backfires 80% of the time per vet rehab data. Compare it to the feral labs of Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. Traumatized dogs once deemed hopeless were rehabbed through slow trust building, becoming therapy animals that healed PTSD victims. Contrast that with failures in overpacked shelters where impatience leads to euthanasia's common pitfall, like the town's urge to bait traps, which only heightens aggression and scatters packs further. Henry's own slip-up. He almost charged in once, rifle in hand, nearly undoing weeks of progress. A stark reminder that haste buries hidden strengths, while true healing demands a two-way street of vulnerability. But hold on, nature had its own plans to crank up the drama. One afternoon, the Montana skies turned black without warning, thunder cracking like a whip across the valley. Wind howled down the ridges, bending pines and churning the creek into a raging torrent. Dr. Klein scrambled to secure her gear. Henry bolted the barn doors against the gale, but Emma, she vanished into the storm, a scribbled note on the screen door. "They're scared, I have to help." Henry's heart seized. He plunged after her rain, lashing his face boots, slipping on mud-slick trails. Up on the ridge, amid lightning flashes, he found her soaked to the bone, standing defiant in the downpour. The pack huddled nearby, Shadow flinching at each boom, Mist whimpering, Echo pacing. But Blaze. In a jaw-dropping twist that replayed in Henry's nightmares, a massive branch cracked from a tree, hurtling toward Emma. Blaze lunged not at her, but into the path, shoving her aside with his bulk as the limb crashed down inches away. Bruised but unbowed, he pressed against her leg, a silent guardian born from the chaos. The storm had revealed it. This wasn't one-way rescue. The pack was saving her too. Dr. Klein, reviewing the footage later, whispered, "That's not survival, that's loyalty reborn." But the real bombshell came when she traced Echo's collar tag, further a plot twist that hit like lightning. Records showed he wasn't just a rescue dog. He'd been a legend in that Idaho mine collapse, saving 5 lives before his owners dumped him like yesterday's news. Echo's scars, from the rubble, not abuse, yet betrayal, had scarred his soul deeper. This revelation. It cracked the town's armor whispers, shifting from "kill them" to "maybe there's more." The lesson rings clear. Patience uncovers hidden strengths, but haste buries them forever. Embrace the storm, and you'll find allies in the shadows. Yet as bonds strengthened, so did the trials ahead. A rifle's crack, a tangled injury, and a public reckoning that would push everyone to the brink. Stick around, because the turning point is coming, where trust faces its ultimate test, and secrets unravel in ways that could heal or destroy. What if the line between hero and villain was just one desperate moment, and a child's courage could redraw it in a heartbeat? The air in Misty Valley crackled with tension, like the sky before a lightning strike. Emma's quiet magic had begun to tame the wild pack, Shadow Blaze Mist and Echo drawing them closer to Whispering Pines Animal Haven with every sketch and scrap of jerky. But time was running out. The town's 2-week truce hung by a thread, and the skeptics were growing louder, their fear as sharp as the wind rattling the pines. Henry stood on the sanctuary porch, coffee cold in his hands, watching Emma climb the ridge each dawn, her braid swinging her silence louder than any shout. Dr. Sarah Klein's cameras caught every step, Mist now nuzzling Emma's palm, Blaze no longer snarling, even Shadow inching closer, her storm cloud eyes softening. But the real test. It wasn't just about trust, it was about proving it to a town ready to pull the trigger. Days bled into nights, and the valley held its breath. Then, disaster struck. On the 4th evening of the trial, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, 2 rifle cracks split the dusk. Elk hunters, legal but reckless, firing too close to sanctuary land. The sound hit the pack like a whip. Blaze, still wired from his storm-born heroics, bolted in a blind panic straight into the old back pasture. Henry's heart sank as he heard the cry sharp raw, the kind that burrows into your bones. He sprinted after Emma, who was already running her small frame, cutting through the twilight like an arrow. By the time Henry and Dr. Klein caught up, they found her kneeling in the grass, hands trembling but steady blood staining her jeans. Blaze had tangled in a snarl of rusted barbed wire, a forgotten stretch of fence not yet replaced. The wire bit into his leg, not deep enough to maim, but enough to trap him, pain flashing in his wild eyes. Henry started forward, old medic instincts kicking in, but Emma raised a hand, calm, commanding a silent stop. Then in a moment that froze everyone, she pulled her warped sketchbook from her coat, flipping to a page she'd drawn nights before. The pack curled around her under a starlit ridge. Peaceful whole. A family. She held it up not for Blaze, but for Shadow, who stood rigid at the edge of the clearing, hackles high. It was hope drawn in pencil and love. Emma turned back to Blaze, her fingers working the wire with a gentleness that belied the blood and chaos, murmuring soft, wordless sounds like a lullaby only the broken could hear. Henry took over hands steady from years of field patches, freeing the wire, as Blaze lay still, not snapping, not growling, but watching Emma with eyes that said more than teeth ever could. When the wire came loose, pain hit full force, and Blaze pressed his muzzle against her hand, not a bite, but a thank you raw and real. Dr. Klein, catching her breath, whispered, "That's not just trust, that's a bond forged in fire." But the twists weren't done. As Henry bandaged Blaze in the barn that night, Dr. Klein's radio crackled with a bombshell from Sheriff Torres. A local rancher, Jed Harlan, had been caught setting out poisoned bait near the sanctuary, driven by fear after the rifle shots spooked his cattle. Henry's fists clenched. He'd nearly lost Blaze to wire. And now this. The town's fear was a ticking bomb, and Jed's stunt could have killed not just the pack, but any sanctuary animal, or worse, Emma. Torres had him in custody, but the damage was done. Whispers of vigilante justice spread threatening to unravel everything. Then came the second twist, the kind that flips your heart upside down. Dr. Klein's cameras scanning the woods for more bait caught Echo leading 3 tiny shivering puppies from a hidden den under the ridge. Echo, the scarred hero, wasn't just a survivor. He was a father protecting a secret litter born in the wild. Suddenly, the pack wasn't a threat. They were a family fighting to survive, just like Emma. Let's unpack this because it's deeper than it looks. Trauma in animals, like in people, breeds cycles of fear untreated. It spirals, as animal welfare studies show, with 70% of feral dogs rehabbed successfully through patients like Australia's dingo projects. Compare this to California's pit bull redemption programs, where injured strays became therapy dogs, versus overpopulated shelters, where haste leads to 1 million euthanasias a year in the U.S. The town's mistake. Acting on panic, like Jed's poison, which mirrors real-world culls that backfire by scattering packs or harming ecosystems. Emma's approach, slow, non-confrontational, works because it respects the science of trust, rewiring fear through connection, not force. Henry's near intervention with Blaze. A classic error, nearly breaking the fragile bond. The lesson hits hard. In adversity, vulnerability is your greatest ally. Rushing solutions only amplifies the problem, but a steady hand can turn pain into progress. The public demo loomed just days away, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The council wanted proof, not sketches or stories, but hard evidence the pack could coexist. Emma's sketchbook, now smeared with dirt and blood, held more than drawings. It held her voice stirring for the first time in 18 months. As she whispered to Blaze in the barn, a single word: stay. Henry's eyes stung with tears. The pack, the puppies, the town's judgment, it all hung in the balance. Stay with me, because the final showdown is coming, where Emma's quiet courage and a pack of wild hearts face a reckoning that could change Misty Valley forever.